Mariano Agnew with the final bell, and I am happy to be joined by Francis Frank the Tank Hogan. Frank, how are you?
I'm good. Just left the gym a little while ago. Just made it in time for the Zoom.
Well, glad to hear it, man. Tell me, how's training going for your fight against Khiary Gray on February 22nd?
It's going good. I train in 3 times a day, eating right, sleeping enough. He's
Mhm.
gonna be the trailer park, and I'm gonna be the tornado, and I'm gonna come rip him up. So I know everybody's saying there's a lot of people commenting on my Facebook and stuff that he's coming in shape and
Yeah.
he's ready, but that's what I want. That's what I want. I don't want any excuses. I'm coming to win. I'm coming to fight, win, take over. So that's the goal.
Yeah. And where do you train out of?
So I train out of Everybody Fights. It's right in the Seaport district in Boston.
Gotcha. Yeah, I lived in Malden, Mass for a long time, but now I live in right outside of New York City,
Oh wow, okay.
the area. Yeah. Um, and as far as Khiary Gray and yourself, like, did you ever? I know you're both from Massachusetts. Did you ever encounter him as an amateur or anything like that, or no?
No, I didn't. I've never encountered him. I don't think I've ever actually met him. I was going over this with my trainer actually the other day. I know who he is. I know who he is from his fights and his fight history, but I don't know him personally or I've never run into him.
Yeah. Well, looking at that fight history that you mentioned, it looks like he does have more experience against like top guys than you do. But
Yeah,
I also noticed that, whenever he stepped up, he has fallen short, right? Guys
yeah.
like Charles Conwell, who's a top junior middleweight now, Gary O'Sullivan, Bakram Murtazalayev, who's now a champion. What do you think is going to be the big difference between the two of you, or the key difference?
I think the big difference is he's probably looking at me and not thinking much because I'm tall and skinny.
Yeah.
Most people underestimate my power. I know there's the one thing I do have is my power, and I know how to land and place certain shots that hurt. And I'm a long fighter, and I come forward and I establish my jab early. So I also think that I noticed that he's was usually fighting a junior middleweight. This is 160, so I think the size advantage is going to be in my favor. And I'm younger, and I'm a little bit more, I don't know, closer to my prime than I feel than he is.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so for sure. How did you get into boxing?
I started boxing when I was about like 10 or 11. Uh, Started going with a kid that lived up the street from me, and
Mhm.
my dad brought me, him, and my brother and his uncle Johnny with us actually, and we went to High Park. I think it was a gentleman's gym that I first started at. Then we went to Peter Welch's gym couple of short months after that and started fighting in Southie. And the rest is history. We just kept going. My dad kept bringing us around for amateur
Yeah.
shows, and we started realizing like everybody was really good at the time. So me and my brother made the decision: quit every
Mhm.
other sport and start boxing full time, or
Right.
start quit boxing and play all the other sports. But I wasn't really into all the other sports because it was team sports. Like boxing's what I get out of it. What I put into
Right.
it, I get out of it. So I started grinding, and I had a lot of losses in the amateurs as a young kid, probably like 40 straight. And then next thing you know, I just started dropping people. I knocking people out. Everybody started talking about me, and then I started going to the nationals and started winning the nationals. I couldn't believe it. And then here I am today fighting professional.
Yeah. What do you think changed as far as like, did something click, or maybe you just got older and stronger? What do you think changed?
Um, I think the experience definitely changed because I was so used to sparring guys that were like less or close to the caliber of me, and we didn't really ever want that. We always wanted to fight the better, tougher, heavier, stronger guys, that were had more fights. And we started going out of Big Six actually in Rhode Island,
Yeah.
and they have still to this day probably some of the top amateurs and pros in New England, and they're all at one gym. It was an easy location. Crappy drive coming down from Weymouth at the time,
Yeah.
going down there, but
Yeah.
it was worth the drive, all the experience. We'd get a ton of rounds. And I think that's what changed us and brought us to that next level of like boxing, really. And that's what got us the respect because we were getting in there with guys that are pros and guys that
Right.
were amateurs that have been in the game like 10 more years than us, So I think
Yeah.
that's what changed a lot.
Definitely. And were you born in Boston and now living in Weymouth, or like at the time, where were you when you started boxing?
So born in Boston.
Mhm.
Southeast too expensive. That's where my parents were born, but it's millions
Yeah,
of dollars over there now.
yeah,
Uh,
sure.
we moved in with my grandmother for a couple of years in Dorchester, and then we went to Weymouth, and then probably from when I was like two, 2 or 3 years old, all the way up till just 3 years ago now, I lived in Weymouth.
Yeah,
Grew up, born and raised, pretty much, and
right.
we'd make the commute all the way down to Rhode Island. Crappy drive, like I said, but the experience was so worth it. And we got to make a lot of great relationships down there with Roland Estrada, that owns the gym, Jason, his son, Eric, his other son. There's a lot of them down there that really are still close to us this day.
Yeah, I know they have a podcast, right? Like the
Yeah,
brother.
they have the four brothers. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And I know Alejandro Paulino also trains out of there,
Yep.
right? Who was a teammate of yours on the TCL as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How was that experience, by the way, the TCL?
Um, Crazy, really. It was like guys going in. Everybody pretty much would set the pace right off the rip in the first round. Like we'd see the first two guys go out, and that was like, oh, all right. Everybody kind of was like a rally thing, like when like a team's got like they're down 3 runs and there's three guys on base and David Ortiz gets up to the bat and hits a home run, the team goes nuts. So like the first guy gets up and wins, or even if he loses, then everybody just is riled up and pretty much the game plan goes out the window. We go in there and try to kill whoever's in front of us. But I mean, it was a cool experience too. All professional fighters, like going to travel around together. We made a lot of cool memories.
Yeah, and you fought some good guys, right? Like all of you had like
Yeah.
and it could be like a really experienced guy or someone who maybe doesn't have much experience, right?
Yeah.
It ran the gamut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a ton of different variations of experience,
Mhm.
size, height, even fight styles, like guys from LA that are mostly Mexican have
Like
Mexican
fresh
styles.
fighters, right?
So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
get that Mexican come forward style. And
Right.
tall guys like me are like also come forward. So it's cool to like see the battles on who's going to fight who and how the fight goes. And it was only one round. So
Yeah. So it's a very high pace, high intensity kind of fight.
yeah.
I watched a few of the events for sure. Um, so as far as so you, your brother, and your friend started together. Are you the only one that's still boxing, or does your brother still fight?
So my friend did it for a couple more years after that. He doesn't box anymore, but my brother actually boxed all the way up till he went in the Marines
Oh, okay.
uh 4 years ago. And
Yeah,
he still works out and stuff though. He's still itching to get back into it. But
yeah,
as of right now, I'm the only one that's still going at it really.
yeah. Nice, nice. Did you look up to any fighters growing up, or did you have any like guys that you would follow on TV that you really liked?
So my trainer actually, Mark DeLuca, I used to look up to him a bunch when I was a young kid. I used to go to a lot of his fights as an
Yeah,
amateur, and all the way up till when I wasn't an amateur and I was about to go pro. I always was in his training camps at the end there and everything. So it was pretty
yeah.
cool.
And it is very cool that now he's your trainer. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And then the other thing that's really impressive is, you're going from, the TCL to now headlining at the big room at Foxwoods, which we haven't been at for a couple of years. Is my
yeah.
understanding. How does that feel, headlining such a big card?
It's pretty awesome. I've never been to the big room down there even just to watch fights. I've been to the
Yeah,
small theater that they have, and I fought there last time, but
yeah,
I've never actually seen like until I looked it up on the internet, like what it looked like. I was like, holy shit, like it's gonna be pretty cool. Big deal, like cool to
yeah,
have it on my record.
definitely, definitely. And it's a pretty big card, right? Pretty stacked. I know Alejandro was injured and he's not able to be on that card, but still a very stacked card.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely as a stack card. There's gonna be some really great fights.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. What are your goals this year? I know you're the WBC US Silver Middleweight champion, which is always so hard to say all those words at once.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
what are your goals this year? How many times do you want to fight?
I kind of leave it up to my trainer. My promoter is Jimmy, but my trainer is Mark, and we were stable mates for a long time, and he's been really close to me in my life. So I
Yeah,
kind of leave it up to Mark because like he's more like a older brother kind of situation. So like I let him be like the manager, and
yeah,
he
sure.
takes control, and like all right, like he knows boxing like nobody else. So he knows all the fighters. He knows who's doing what, and like who's won what and who's a good fight and who would be a crappy fight for this amount. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so
He looks at the styles and all of that, right? And see
yeah,
as
yeah.
well.
He's like a mad scientist when it comes to boxing. So,
Awesome. Speaking of that, right? Like maybe guys in your division. And do you watch a lot of boxing also, like on your spare time, like when there are fights happening or no?
um, yeah, I don't really ever really like watch the fights live. Like I wanted to watch that Benavidez fight the other night, but it
Oh
was like
yeah.
$80 to get. So
No.
I was like, I'm not gonna spend that amount of money, you know. So I just waited till afterwards to watch it. But I try
Yeah.
to keep up with like all the fights going on now. I mean, there's there are great fighters out right now, but I don't think there's a bunch of great fighters like back in the day, Marvin Hagler, Tommy Hearns, Roberto Duran. So I usually go back and I watch the old timers and see what they did in training and all that stuff, you know.
Right. And when you look at, say, your division right now, the middleweight division,
Yep.
is there someone, and I'm talking not the champions yet, but like, is there someone that you look at and you're like, I'd like to fight him one day?
Um, it's a good question. I mean, Terrence Crawford just bumped up to 154, and now he's saying he's might go up to 168. He's just gonna jump a weight class, go right to another weight class.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I guess I could say Terrence Crawford maybe some point in time, but I mean, if there was somebody that was also a prospect coming up, I could say probably say like Connor Coyle. I
Oh
believe
yeah.
he's out of Florida. He's got a good style.
Mhm.
I don't think he punches that hard, and I think it'd be a good fight for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds good. And then looking at the champions, I mean, there's Alim Kanuli, who's from Kazakhstan, who's a tough fight, and a lot of people don't really want to fight him, but he's got two of the belts. Then you have Carlos Adames
Yep.
from the Dominican Republic, and he's fighting Hamza Shiraz on the 22nd, the same day you're fighting.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then you have Arizlani Lara, who's a little bit long in the tooth now, but he seems to be more exciting because he's older and now he doesn't move as much,
Yeah.
right? So he engages more. But you can tell just from that list, I think there is going to be a change soon, right? Especially
Yeah.
Arizlani Lara is probably going to retire at some point soon. He's in
Yep.
his 40s. Alim Kanuli, I think, is kind of big for the weight. I think he's going to move up. So there are going to
Yep.
be opportunities within the next year, I would say.
Yeah. I think I'd like to say the next generation of boxing really. I feel it comes in increments. You know, like I don't know what the exact increments are because sometimes you get a guy that comes out of nowhere in the middle of it all. But I
Right.
mean, kind of everybody's kind of on their way, not way out in a bad way, but like everyone's getting to that age where like it's kind of time to hang it up almost. You know, they got a couple years left in them, a couple fights left. You know, like what are they gonna do? Fight once or twice a year, and then that'll be it. And then you
Yeah.
got a guy like me or guys like me from like the bracket of like 2019, 2020 that went pro, and now I'm 18 and 0, and I'm 24 years old. I mean, I am. I will say, I think I am young for my like amount of fights I have. But I
Yeah.
mean, I think I am the next generation of boxing, and I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to either have to fight guys like me, which are hungry, which I am very hungry to get a W against a lot of these guys, and or they could retire. So I think
Right.
that's next thing, and you know, vacate their belts. That's what they're going to have to do. So I think that's when the next generation is going to move in, and I think that's when the next generation of great fights will happen.
Yeah, and I think you're right about like a lot of the sort of big names have either retired or they're getting older, and so yeah, there's going to have to be a new generation to replace them.
Yeah,
United States, I feel like there's a little bit of a gap, so it would be good for guys like
yeah,
you to continue, developing and being successful for
yeah.
sure. Yeah. Last question for you is when it comes to the scene in Boston, the boxing scene, what is it like? And how has it changed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about over the years, but like guys fall off, guys move a lot. They go. Everybody thinks boxing's elsewhere for some reason. When it comes to Boston, they think, oh, you got to go. Everybody wants to say, oh, you got to go to Vegas, money fights. You got to go to California. You got to go to here or there. And I don't believe any of that's true. If you're a good fighter, or if you're going to be a great fighter someday, and you got the right guys up here to spar, and you guys get the right training and the right trainer who can get in sparring and are willing to travel for sparring, because most guys, believe it or not, are not willing to travel. Even the top guys, you know, they're not willing to drive even 30, 40 minutes. So I think the big thing with me and my trainer and all the fighters, because we have a good camp like me, we got Bernard, Thomas O'Toole,
Oh yeah.
Abraham Nova. Like, we got a lot of guys like that are on the come up right now, and I don't know. We drive. Like, we'll get in the car and drive. We'll go to Florida if we have to. Like, it doesn't matter to us. Like,
Visit
we'll go
other
where
gyms.
the work is. Like, oh, so and so fights just like so and so, only he's even a little better. Let's go spar him. You know. And like,
Yeah.
they want, other fighters want the work. They're willing to let us drive an hour and a half. Why? Because we're all good fighters. You know, like, we all bring something to the table, and we'll get them better. So it's worth it on both sides. You know.
Yeah, you're sharpening each other up, which is great.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, look, man, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you're in training and you probably want to get something to eat, but what do you want to say to the fans that are coming out on February 22nd to support you at Foxwoods, the Premier Theater?
I'd like to say to the fans, just like I said before, Khiary Gray, he's the old trailer park, and I'm the fresh new tornado coming in, and I'm planning to sweep him up. Coming for war, really. Just like Marvin Hagler used to say back in the day. I feel this fight is the fight where I'm going to have to make a statement. Not that any of the other fights weren't times to make statements, but this is the one where, like, I got to show everybody, like, the power is real. Like, I can punch hard. I am fast. And I do have boxing tools in my tool bag. So I think that's going to show fight night, 10 rounds.
And you just reminded me, like, I guess in your last fight, do you feel like maybe you didn't get a chance to do that just because Alvin Ayala, seemed to have gotten hurt, right? When he took a step back?
Yeah. There's people that say that he took a step back and like tore it, but I think when I hit him with the left to the body, I think just so much pressure was applied to him, and he is an older guy, like, I respect him too. He got in the ring with me and fought me. Yeah. But I think he's older, and I think he's seen better days. His body, boxers' bodies, man, they get beat up. I'm 24 years old. I can't even run outside in the winter because my knees hurt like so bad, and my joints and my hands and my wrists. So, I mean, hats off to him. I think the power was what did it, and his knee just couldn't take it, and that's why it blew out on him. I do wish I had more time. I said that after the fight, but because the fight previously to that, I think was one of the best I've looked. Like, boxing wise, anyways. I was relaxed, established my jab, and took him out with a body shot, actually. So
that was Heber Rondon, right? That was the fight in Foxwoods, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, look, best of luck on February 22nd. I'll see you there, and hopefully we can catch up after the fight and do a post-fight interview. Francis Hogan, take care, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Great meeting you, man.